The evening air in Dixon, Kentucky carried a quiet heaviness, the kind that feels like the world is holding its breath. Inside a small house lit by a single lamp, Amy Slaton sat frozen on the living room couch, her hands trembling, her heart pounding like it was trying to escape her chest. Her baby's faint cries echoed through the hall, soft at first, then sharper, the kind of sound that tears a mother apart from the inside out. A few minutes earlier, her husband, Brian, had stormed out of the door, his voice still ringing in the corners of the room. Another argument, another night of fear, another moment that had gone too far. Amy stared down at the blanket on her lap, her tears dripping onto the fabric, and whispered, "This can't be my life anymore." She had endured many storms, her struggles with weight, self-worth, heartbreak, but this was different. This was about her child, and something in her, something long silent and buried under years of exhaustion, snapped. "Nobody touches my baby," she muttered to herself, her voice shaking but fierce. Nobody. Her phone was slick with tears as she called her sister. Tammy picked up on the second ring. "Amy?" Her voice came, groggy but alert. "Tammy," Amy whispered, barely able to speak. He yelled at the baby. "He hit him. I can't stay here. I can't." For a few seconds, Tammy didn't reply. Then her tone changed. Protective, angry, alive. "Amy, listen to me. Pack your things. Take the baby and come to my place. Tonight. You're not staying there another minute. We'll go to the cops first thing in the morning." Amy's hands shook as she packed. A few clothes, a blanket, her baby's favorite toy. Every sound felt too loud, every shadow too dark. The house that once felt like a home now felt like a cage. She held her son close and whispered, "It's just you and me now, baby. Mommy's here." When she arrived at Tammy's, the night was still cold. Her sister opened the door before she even knocked. Tammy didn't speak. She just wrapped her arms around her, held her tight, and whispered, "You did the right thing." Amy cried into her sister's shoulder until there were no tears left. The next morning, as the sun broke through gray clouds, Amy walked up the courthouse steps, her child in her arms. Reporters were already there. Cameras, voices, the sound of whispers spreading like wildfire. TLC star files for custody battle. But Amy didn't care about the noise. She only cared about protecting her son. Inside the courtroom, the air was thick. Amy's voice quivered at first, but then grew steady, stronger. "I may not be able to live with him anymore," she told the judge. "All I want is peace for my child. A safe home. A place without fear." The silence that followed felt eternal. Brian's lawyer tried to deflect. Excuses, denials. But the truth came forward anyway. The neighbors' statements. The medical report. The bruises. The pictures. It all painted a story that broke hearts, even in a room used to heartbreak. Amy's courage, though born of pain, began to shine. Outside, a small crowd had gathered. Fans, neighbors, strangers, holding signs that read, "Stay strong, Amy." Tammy stood beside her sister, her hand gripping hers tightly. "You did it," Tammy said quietly. "You stood up for yourself. And for that baby." Amy looked at her son's tiny fingers curled around hers. "No child should grow up scared," she said softly. "And no mother should ever have to choose between fear and freedom." The days that followed were hard, but different. Amy filed for divorce and began going to therapy. TLC's cameras, once focused on her weight loss journey, now captured something deeper, a woman rebuilding her soul piece by piece. Weeks later, as the sun dipped below the Kentucky hills, Amy stood on her porch with her son asleep in her arms. The world was quiet again. "We made it," she whispered to him. "Mommy's here. Mommy will always stand up for you." It was no longer a story about weight or fame. It was about survival, about rediscovering strength she didn't know she had. Amy Slaton wasn't just a reality star anymore. She was a mother, a fighter, a survivor. But life, in its strange rhythm, doesn't end with pain. It twists, heals, and surprises. Months later, the sun rose over the Slaton home in a burst of golden light. Inside, chaos reigned. Half-packed suitcases, clothes scattered, and laughter bouncing off the walls. "Where's my passport, Tammy?" Amy shouted, rummaging through her bag. "You didn't lose it again, did you?" Tammy rolled her eyes, sipping from her water bottle. "Girl, you're the one who keeps all your important documents in your kitchen drawer." "Who does that?" Amy laughed. "I do, apparently. But this is different, Tammy. This is our first trip out of the country." "London, baby!" TLC had arranged a special Across the Pond episode, taking the sisters to London. It was a dream neither had imagined would come true. For once, it wasn't about surgeries or diets or drama. It was about joy. About two women who had been through hell finally getting a taste of something new. Amy held up a sparkly Union Jack shirt. "Look, Tammy, I'm wearing this when we go to Buckingham Palace. Maybe the Queen will think I'm royal." Tammy blinked. "There's no Queen anymore, Amy. You better check your history before you embarrass us on TV." Amy threw a pillow at her. "You're no fun." Her son Gage ran through the living room, a toy airplane in his hand. "We're going to London!" he shouted, spinning in circles. His little brother Glenn clapped and giggled from his playpen. The sound filled the house like sunlight. Tammy smiled, watching her sister bustle around. "You've come a long way, Amy," she said softly. "From crying on your porch to flying across the world." Amy nodded. "I've worked for this, Tam. This trip isn't just for fun, it's proof that we survived. That we're living again." The day they left, their brother Chris met them at the airport, grinning. "Y'all better not come back talking with those British accents." Amy smirked. "Oh, I'll come back classy, darling. Tea time and crumpets." "Lord help us," Tammy muttered, and everyone laughed. On the plane, Amy filmed everything for the show. The food, the clouds, the nervous giggles. "Tammy, look out there," she whispered. "It's like we're floating through cotton candy." When they landed, the London air hit their faces. Crisp, cold, alive. Red buses, black cabs, and the hum of a new city welcomed them. Tammy whispered, "We really made it." Their itinerary was packed. Big Ben, the London Eye, tea at the Ritz, a trip to Stonehenge. Amy's favorite part was the Harry Potter studio tour. Tammy's, the penguins at the London Zoo. On their first day out, Amy dragged Tammy to a fish and chips stand. "You have to eat it the British way," she said, handing her a cone of steaming fries and fried fish. Tammy took a bite and nodded. "Okay, this is actually amazing." They laughed, ate, explored, and shared moments of silence too, standing on bridges, staring at the Thames, remembering how far they had come. On their last night, standing on Tower Bridge under the glittering city lights, Amy whispered, "We did it, sis." Tammy squeezed her hand. "Yeah, and this is just the beginning." The camera zoomed out slowly. Two sisters, survivors, standing side by side as the world opened wide before them. When Amy returned home from London, the air in Kentucky felt different. Softer somehow. Familiar but lighter, as if the weight she'd been carrying for years had started to dissolve in pieces. The trip hadn't just been a vacation, it had been a quiet resurrection. She had seen a version of herself that had been buried beneath fear and self-doubt, a woman who could laugh again, dream again, live again. But the moment the cameras stopped rolling and the suitcases were unpacked, the silence returned. Not the dark, heavy silence of heartbreak, but the kind that asks, "Now what?" Amy walked through her small home, her footsteps echoing across the hardwood floors. Toys were scattered everywhere. Clothes hung half-folded on the couch, and the smell of baby lotion filled the air. She paused in the hallway, looking at the framed photo on the wall, a picture from 2 years ago, back when everything felt safe. Her hair was different, her smile wider. She looked at that woman and whispered, "You went through hell, but you're still here." She poured herself a cup of coffee and sat on the porch. The morning light fell over her gently, painting her in gold. Tammy called a few minutes later, her voice buzzing through the phone. "So, what now? What's next for Amy Slaton? World traveler, mom of two, survivor extraordinaire?" Amy laughed. "What's next? I guess I just want a home that feels like peace. A fresh start. Somewhere the boys can grow up without memories of shouting or fear." Tammy was quiet for a second. "You deserve that," she said softly. "You've earned it." And so began Amy's search for a new home, not just a house, but a space that would let her breathe. She drove through small Kentucky towns with her realtor, looking at little white houses, brick ones, even a few with wraparound porches. Nothing felt right. Some were too small, some too dark, some just empty. Then one afternoon she found it. A pale blue house with a big oak tree in the front yard, a swing hanging from its branch, and sunlight spilling across the porch like a promise. Amy stepped out of her car and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Calm. She could see her kids running through the yard, could imagine Christmas lights glowing on the porch, could almost hear laughter inside. The realtor smiled. You like it, don't you? Amy nodded slowly. Yeah, this feels right. She walked inside. Wooden floors, white walls, and the faint smell of lavender from the last owner. She touched the walls, tracing invisible lines. This is it, she whispered. This is home. This is it, she whispered. This is home. Tammy came to see it the next day, and the moment she stepped in, she grinned. Girl, this is you. Bright, open, no drama, finally, Amy chuckled. That's the plan. No drama, no pain, just peace. As the weeks went by, the house became alive with sound. The boys laughed and played, the smell of spaghetti filled the kitchen, and Amy started to decorate. One room at a time. She hung up framed drawings her kids made, put fairy lights around the window, and filled the shelves with plants she didn't know how to care for yet. But it didn't matter. She was building a life, not a display. Sometimes at night, after putting the boys to sleep, she'd sit by the window with a cup of tea and watch the stars. We made it, she'd whisper again. We really did, but even peace carries ghosts. One afternoon, while scrolling through her phone, Amy came across a photo of her ex with someone new. Smiling, laughing, posing for the camera like nothing had happened. The caption read, New Beginnings. For a moment, Amy's chest tightened. That familiar sting of hurt, betrayal, confusion, all of it flooded back. She turned off her phone, leaned back in her chair, and closed her eyes. It wasn't jealousy. It wasn't even anger. It was grief, the kind that doesn't scream but sighs. Tammy noticed the shift. Don't let him back in your head, she told her one evening. You already won, Amy. You're happy. You're free. He's just noise, Amy nodded. I know. I'm just tired of people asking, are you dating again? Like healing is a race, Tammy smiled knowingly. People always want a fairy tale ending. They don't understand that sometimes the ending is just peace. That night, Amy wrote in her journal, something she hadn't done in years. She wrote about forgiveness, about motherhood, about fear, and then she wrote about hope. She ended the page with one line. I'm learning to love the quiet parts of my life. Weeks passed, and with every day, she began to glow differently. Her laugh was louder, her steps lighter. Even the fans online began to notice. Under her latest Instagram photo, a selfie with her kids in matching pajamas, the comments poured in, she looks happier than ever. Motherhood suits you, Amy. Her smile finally looks real again. And it was. TLC's producers noticed too. They approached her about filming a new miniseries, a focus on her rebuilding journey, titled Amy's Next Chapter. Unlike the past seasons, this one wasn't about numbers on a scale or surgeries. It was about life after pain. Amy hesitated at first. I don't know if I want to be that open again, she admitted to Tammy. But Tammy, ever the voice of balance now, said, Amy, your story might help somebody. You went through fire and came out the other side. People need to see that it's possible. So, Amy agreed. When filming began, she didn't pretend. She didn't hide the messy parts, the crying at night, the days she felt lonely, the moments she questioned if she was enough. The cameras caught her unfiltered, folding laundry with tears in her eyes, holding her sons close after nightmares, laughing with Tammy over burnt pancakes. And that's what made people fall in love with her all over again. One scene in particular broke hearts across the country. Amy sat on her couch, the afternoon sun falling on her face. She looked straight into the camera and said quietly, You know, I used to think happiness meant having somebody love me. But now I know. Happiness is when I can look at myself and say, You made it, girl. You kept going. That clip went viral. Within days, fan pages flooded with messages of love and support. You inspire me, Amy. One comment read, If she can start over, so can I. Amy read them all, often crying between takes. If my story helps even one woman leave a bad situation, she said, then everything I went through means something. In time, life settled into a rhythm. School runs, filming, home-cooked dinners, bedtime stories. But somewhere between all that, a small spark returned, a quiet curiosity about love. It started with laughter. A new friend she'd met at a local parenting group. Soft-spoken, kind, the kind of person who listened without trying to fix everything. His name was Daniel. He wasn't part of her old world. No cameras, no gossip, no past tied to the show. Just a regular guy who loved kids, fixed cars, and brought her coffee when she looked tired. At first, Amy brushed it off. "I'm not ready," she told Tammy. But Tammy just smiled. "You don't have to be ready. Just be open." Slowly, Amy let her walls down. They went on small walks, shared stories about childhood, and talked about everything: faith, fear, the future. He never asked about her fame or the show. He just saw her, Amy, the mom, the woman, the survivor, and that was enough. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, he said softly, "You've been through a lot, haven't you?" Amy nodded. "Yeah, but I think I had to find peace." He smiled. "Then I'm glad peace found you." That night, Amy realized something. She wasn't broken anymore. She was healing. Not because someone saved her, but because she chose herself first. The following weeks unfolded like gentle waves, one blending into another, steady and calm. There was no chaos, no noise, no headlines. Just life, raw and real, exactly how Amy had once prayed for it to be. Every morning started with the laughter of her sons, Gage and Glenn chasing each other through the hallway, their tiny feet thudding across the floors. Amy would lean against the kitchen counter with her coffee, watching them, hair messy, eyes bright, energy boundless. They were her whole world, her reason to wake up every day and keep fighting. Sometimes she'd think about the years she'd spent worrying about numbers, pounds lost, ratings gained, followers counted. And then she'd look at those boys and realize none of it mattered. This was what mattered. Two little souls who saw her not as a celebrity, not as a woman who'd made mistakes, but as mom. They didn't care if her hair wasn't perfect, or if the dishes piled up, or if some stranger online wrote something cruel. To them, she was safety, warmth, and love. And that realization, that unconditional love, began to rebuild her from the inside out. Amy's nights were different now. Where once she used to scroll through comments or replay memories that hurt, now she read bedtime stories, tucked her boys under soft blankets, and whispered prayers over them. The same words every night, simple but powerful. May you always know love, even when the world gets hard. After they'd drifted off to sleep, she'd sit by the window again. The moonlight spilled across her journal as she wrote about small victories, cooking without crying, laughing without guilt, breathing without fear. Healing wasn't glamorous. It wasn't a movie montage or a single breakthrough. It was slow. It was quiet. Some days she felt unstoppable. Other days she'd crumble for no reason. But even on the hard days, she no longer hated herself for feeling. She let herself break when she needed to, trusting that she'd rebuild again, stronger. Tammy noticed the change too. The sisters were closer than they'd ever been, not because the cameras wanted them to be, but because they'd finally learned to understand each other. For years, their relationship had been tangled in competition and pain, who lost more weight, who got more attention, who was doing better. But now, they were just two women who'd been through the fire and found each other on the other side. One evening, Tammy came over for dinner. The boys were playing in the yard, and the sun was setting behind the trees, painting the sky pink and gold. Tammy looked around the cozy house and smiled. "You did it," she said softly. "You built something real," Amy laughed. "Still figuring it out. Half the time, I don't even know what I'm doing." Tammy shrugged. "No one does. But this feels right. You look at peace," Amy smiled. "I think I am. Or at least, getting there." They sat outside with plates of spaghetti, talking about everything: motherhood, fame, fear, and the strange kind of loneliness that comes with being recognized everywhere, but still misunderstood by so many. At one point, Tammy said, "It's weird, isn't it? How people think they know us. Like they've lived our lives." Amy nodded slowly. "Yeah, but I've stopped fighting that. Let them think what they want. I can't control their story about me. I can only live mine." Tammy looked at her sister for a long moment. "You sound like someone who's finally free." Amy smiled, a little sad, a little proud. "Maybe I am." Later that night, after Tammy left, Amy stood at the doorway watching her sons sleep. The house was quiet except for the sound of crickets outside. She thought about all the things she'd lost: love, trust, innocence, and all the things she'd gained: strength, clarity, peace. And then she thought about Daniel. He wasn't perfect. He wasn't some fairy tale prince. But he was kind, and steady, and gentle in a way that made Amy feel safe without needing to perform. There was no grand drama between them, no games, no noise, just small moments that built something quietly sacred. He'd show up with flowers he'd picked from the roadside. He'd help fix her kitchen sink without her asking. He'd make her laugh when she was too tired to talk. Sometimes when they sat together, Amy would think, is this what healthy feels like? It wasn't fireworks. It was warmth, the kind that stays. But with warmth came fear too. Amy had learned that happiness could be fragile, that the moment she let her guard down, life could take something away. So she was cautious, too cautious at times. When Daniel asked to take her and the boys out for dinner one weekend, she hesitated. I don't know, she said softly. People talk. Cameras follow, I want to protect them. Cameras follow, I want to protect them. Amy looked over at her kids, then at the open sky. I am, she said, and I'm still learning to be. That night, as the boys slept, Amy went live on Instagram, something she hadn't done in months. No makeup, no lighting setup. Just her, sitting in her kitchen with a cup of tea. She smiled nervously. Hey, y'all. It's been a while. Comments started flooding in. We missed you, Amy. You look so happy. Queen of healing. Amy chuckled softly. I just wanted to come on here and talk to y'all for a minute. You know, life's been hard but also beautiful. I've learned that you don't have to have it all figured out to start living again. You just need to take one step, and then another. Her voice cracked slightly. If you're watching this and you feel stuck, please know you're not broken. You're becoming, and sometimes becoming looks messy. But it's still beautiful, she paused, glancing toward the hallway where her kids slept. I used to think my story ended when things fell apart. But now I know. That's when it really began. The chat flooded with hearts and messages of support. And for the first time in a long, long while, Amy didn't feel like a character on a show. She felt human, seen, whole, and alive. When the live ended, she closed her phone, turned off the light, and whispered to herself, "You did it, girl." The darkness didn't scare her anymore. It felt like rest. Weeks later, filming resumed for Amy's next chapter. But this time, the energy was different. There were no scripts, no forced storylines. The cameras just followed her life as it was, unpolished but real. In one scene, Amy visited her therapist and talked about forgiveness. In another, she took her boys to meet Daniel's parents for the first time. And in one of the most emotional moments of the season, she stood by Michael's grave, not out of grief, but out of closure. She brought no flowers, only silence. I forgive you, she whispered. Not for you, but for me, because I can't carry this anymore. The wind rustled through the trees, and in that stillness, Amy felt something lift from her chest, the last shard of bitterness dissolving into peace. Later, as she walked back to her car, the camera caught a single tear roll down her cheek, but her smile that followed was radiant, because this wasn't sorrow. It was release. By the season's finale, viewers saw a different Amy, not the woman crushed by circumstance, but one who had learned to build again from the ashes. She sat on her porch swing, the same one where she'd once cried alone. Now she was surrounded by her boys, by laughter, by light. And in her closing confessional, she said, "For so long, I thought my weight was the heaviest thing I carried." But it wasn't. It was the guilt, the shame, the fear. Letting that go, that's the real transformation. I may not be perfect. I may not have it all figured out, but I'm here. I'm breathing. I'm living. And that's enough. The camera zoomed out, showing Amy rocking on the swing as the sun dipped below the trees, a woman reborn not by surgery or fame, but by truth. The morning of the surgery was quiet. The hospital lights buzzed softly, sterile and still. Amy sat on the edge of the bed, her gown loose around her shoulders, her heart steady. Not because she wasn't afraid, but because she finally understood why she was doing this. This wasn't about vanity anymore. It wasn't about television, about fans, or about proving something to anyone. It was about reclaiming her body, not as a battlefield, but as a home. Daniel sat beside her, holding her hand. "You ready?" he asked softly. Amy took a deep breath. "For once in my life, I think I am." A nurse came in to prep her. Amy gave a small smile, her eyes glistening. "Let's do this." As they wheeled her toward the operating room, she thought of everything that had led her here. Every heartbreak, every breakdown, every moment when she thought she couldn't go on. And instead of pain, she felt gratitude, because without all of it, she wouldn't have found herself. The surgery went smoothly. When she woke up groggy and sore, Daniel was there. Tammy, too, tears already streaming down her face. "You did it," Tammy whispered, squeezing her hand. "You really did it," Amy smiled weakly. "Guess I'm still full of surprises, huh?" Tammy laughed through her tears. "Always have been." They sat there, three souls who had seen the worst of each other, and still chose love over judgment. For the next few weeks, recovery was hard. There were nights when the pain returned, when her scars burned and her emotions spiraled. But this time, Amy didn't isolate. She let people in. Tammy cooked for her. Daniel stayed by her side, and her boys, Little Gage and Glenn, became her reason to get out of bed every morning. One evening, Gage climbed onto the couch beside her and pressed his small hand against her stomach. "Mommy, you okay?" he asked, his voice full of innocent concern. Amy smiled, holding his hand against her healing scar. "Yeah, baby. Mommy's getting better every day," and she meant it. Weeks turned into months. The camera crew returned to capture the follow-up interviews for Amy's next chapter. The difference was undeniable. Her face looked lighter, her eyes clearer, but the real transformation was something the camera couldn't fully capture. The way she carried herself, the calm in her voice, the stillness in her heart. The producer asked, "Amy, how do you feel now?" Amy thought for a moment, then smiled. "Free," the producer leaned forward. "What does freedom mean to you?" Amy's eyes softened. "Freedom means not needing to hide anymore. Not behind food or pain or fear. Freedom is looking in the mirror and seeing me. Not who I was told to be, not who I had to be to survive, but who I chose to become." The room went silent. Even the camera operators paused. Amy wiped a tear from her cheek and added, "For the first time in my life, I don't want to change who I am. I just want to be her." That night, she and Tammy went live together. Something fans had been waiting for. The comments flew by. "Y'all look amazing! So proud of you both. Sisters stronger than ever!" Tammy looked at her sister and said, "You know, Amy, we've come a long way." Amy laughed. "Yeah, from barely walking to walking in peace." Tammy grinned. "From crying on camera to crying 'cause we happy." They both burst into laughter. Loud, real, unfiltered laughter that echoed through the years of pain they had once lived under. Amy looked at the camera, her tone softening. To everyone watching, don't give up on yourself. Even when it feels like life's falling apart, maybe it's just falling into place. Tammy added, "Amen to that." Months later, the show aired its finale. The episode title, Becoming Amy. Viewers across the world watched as the screen faded in, Amy walking through a park with her kids, sunlight painting her hair gold. A soft voiceover began. "They used to say I'd never change, that I'd always be the girl who gave up too soon, who let fear win. But maybe they were half right. Because the truth is, I didn't change who I was. I just remembered who I'd been all along." Clips rolled, Amy laughing with her boys, hugging Tammy, cooking dinner with Daniel, dancing in her kitchen barefoot. For a long time, I thought happiness had to be big. Cameras, fame, applause. But I've learned that real joy lives in the small moments. The quiet mornings, the bedtime stories, the second chances. The music swelled, a soft piano beneath her voice. I used to chase approval. Now I chase peace. I used to be scared of what people thought of me. Now I'm proud of what I think of myself, and that's freedom. The final shot? Amy on her porch swing, watching her boys play in the yard. A gentle smile on her face, fade to black. When the episode aired, fans flooded social media with messages of love. "Amy Slaton, you're an inspiration. Her strength is unreal." That finale made me cry in the best way. Even critics of the show admitted that this wasn't the same woman they'd first seen on TLC years ago. This was someone who had grown from tragedy into triumph. Amy didn't read all the comments. She didn't need to. Her validation no longer came from the internet. It came from within. One morning, months after filming wrapped, Amy woke early. The house was quiet. She poured herself a cup of coffee and stepped outside. The air was cool, the world still half asleep. She sat on the porch swing, the place that had seen every version of her. The broken one, the brave one, the reborn one. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Thank you." Not to anyone in particular, but to life itself, for not giving up on her when she almost gave up on herself. For showing her that pain wasn't punishment, it was passage. That endings weren't final. They were beginnings in disguise. The wind moved gently through the trees. Like an answer, she smiled, sipping her coffee, watching the sky shift from gray to gold, and as the sun broke through, she whispered one more time, this time with a certainty that came from the depths of her soul. "I'm home." Later that day, she took her kids to the local fair. Cotton candy, carousel rides, laughter filling the air. Fans recognized her, but she didn't feel the old pressure to perform. She was just Amy, a mom, a sister, a woman who had lived and learned. When they got home, Daniel wrapped his arms around her and said, "You know, you've changed a lot." Amy smiled up at him. "Nah, I just stopped pretending." He kissed her forehead. "Well, I love the real you," Amy grinned. "Good, 'cause she's here to stay." As the night settled in, Amy tucked her boys into bed. Gage sleepily mumbled, "Mommy, can we go to the park tomorrow?" Amy brushed his hair back. "Of course, baby. We can go anywhere you want." She turned off the light, closing the door softly. And in that moment, surrounded by quiet, Amy realized something profound. Her story wasn't about losing weight or leaving a man or finding love again. Losing weight or leaving a man or finding love again. Daniel nodded. "Then we'll take it slow. Whatever you're comfortable with." That patience, that understanding, made Amy's chest ache in a good way. He wasn't rushing her. He wasn't trying to fix her. He was just there. Still, when word eventually leaked online that Amy was seeing someone, the internet exploded. Again. Fan pages flooded with comments, half supportive, half cruel. "She's moving too fast. Didn't she learn her lesson? I hope this guy's not using her." Amy tried not to look. But curiosity always won. She'd scroll through the comments late at night, her stomach twisting. No matter how much she'd grown, the words still hurt. The next morning, she vented to Tammy. "I can't win, can I? If I'm sad, they say I'm broken. If I'm happy, they say it's fake. I can't breathe without someone having an opinion." Tammy sighed. "Amy, the internet doesn't love or hate you. It just watches. You can't live for watchers. You gotta live for yourself. And those boys." Amy nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "You're right, I wish people understood that I'm not who I was 5 years ago." Tammy smiled. "Then stop trying to prove it. Just be it." That line stuck with Amy. Stop trying to prove it. Just be it. So she did. She started saying no more often. To producers, to people who drained her, to anyone who made her question her worth. She started saying yes to small joys, painting with her kids, baking cookies, sitting in silence without guilt. Her Instagram changed too. Gone were the filtered, posed photos. Instead, she posted real moments, hair messy, kids giggling, life unedited. And surprisingly, those posts became her most loved. Fans flooded the comments not with gossip, but with gratitude. "Thank you for being real," they wrote. "You make me feel less alone." That was when Amy realized something profound. She didn't want fame anymore. She wanted connection. She wanted her story to mean something, to help someone see that broken doesn't mean finished. Months passed, and with time, the gossip faded. The same fans who once judged her began to defend her. The narrative shifted. Instead of Amy's new man under fire, it became Amy's journey to peace. Even TLC producers noticed. They offered to renew Amy's next chapter for another season, focusing more on her motherhood and healing rather than drama. Amy hesitated, but after long talks with Tammy and her kid's godmother, she agreed, this time on her terms. "No more fake storylines," she told the crew. "No more edits that make me look like something I'm not. If I do this, it's real, or it's nothing." And for the first time in her career, they listened. When cameras rolled again, Amy didn't hide behind makeup or scripts. She spoke about therapy, about learning to set boundaries, about the loneliness of being judged by millions. She opened up about postpartum depression, about feeling lost after fame, about finding herself again in motherhood. The audience connected deeper than ever. Because this wasn't a show anymore. It was a mirror. Tammy appeared too, visibly healthier both physically and emotionally. Their bond, once strained, now radiated love. They bickered, yes, they were sisters after all, Mom, but it was different. There was understanding now. a shared softness born from survival. In one scene that became fan favorite, Tammy looked at Amy during a family barbecue and said, "You know, for the first time, I don't see my little sister struggling. I see a woman who made it through hell and found peace." Amy smiled, eyes glassy. "Took me long enough." They both laughed, the kind of laugh that only comes after years of tears. And for a moment, the world watching from their living rooms felt it too. The weight, the release, the quiet beauty of survival. Amy's story wasn't just entertainment anymore. It had become something much bigger. A lesson in resilience, in love after loss, in finding yourself even when the world thinks it's too late. But deep down, Amy knew. Her journey wasn't over. Not yet. Because healing, she realized, wasn't a destination. It was a rhythm. Some days you move forward. Some days you fall back. But as long as you keep dancing, you're still alive. Amy thought she had made peace with the past. But peace, she realized, isn't the absence of pain. It's learning to live with it. Some nights still carried ghosts. There were moments when the air in her house would feel heavy, when the laughter of her sons would fade into the background, and a memory would suddenly rise, uninvited, vivid, cruel. Michael's voice, the way he used to slam doors, the look in his eyes when anger took over love. She would feel her chest tighten, her breathing grow shallow, her body remembering before her mind could. It was strange. How a person could escape the situation, move houses, start over, and yet the echoes stayed. Trauma wasn't loud anymore. It was quiet, a whisper that crept in when the world went still. Amy learned to face it instead of run. She started therapy again, not because she was broken, but because she finally wanted to understand the woman she had become. "I feel guilty," she confessed during one of the sessions, her hands fidgeting with a tissue. "Not for leaving him, but for staying as long as I did. For letting my kids see what they saw. I thought I was protecting them, but I wasn't." Her therapist, a calm woman with kind eyes, nodded gently. "Amy, guilt is a liar that dresses like responsibility. You did the best you could with what you had at the time. You can forgive the version of you who didn't know how to leave sooner." Amy looked down. "But what if I can't forgive her?" "Then start by understanding her," the therapist said. "She was just trying to survive." That night, Amy drove home in silence, tears blurring her vision. She didn't turn on the radio. She just let the quiet hold her. When she got home, her boys were asleep. She stood by their door watching them breathe, their faces peaceful. And in that soft golden light of the night lamp, she whispered, "I'm sorry." But then she added, with a trembling smile, "And I'm getting better. For you. For me." In the weeks that followed, Amy began to see healing not as a straight road, but as a spiral. Sometimes you circle back, not to suffer again, but to understand deeper. She started journaling not about pain, but about gratitude. Not about what she lost, but about what she'd learned. "I used to think strength meant holding everything in," she wrote one morning. "But now I see it means letting yourself feel it all, and choosing to keep going anyway." Tammy saw the difference. When she visited, she found Amy painting the kitchen cabinets a bright teal. "Girl, what's gotten into you?" She laughed. Amy shrugged, smiling. "Color therapy." Tammy raised an eyebrow. "Since when do you do therapy with paint?" Amy grinned. "Since I realized it's cheaper than crying on camera." They both burst into laughter, the kind that shakes away heaviness. For the first time in years, the house didn't feel haunted. It felt alive. Later that evening, Amy went through old boxes, the ones she'd been avoiding. Inside were photos from the early days of 1000 LB Sisters. Pictures of her and Tammy before the surgeries, before the fame, before the pain. Back when they were just two girls trying to survive in a world that wasn't built for them. She picked up one photo, her and Michael on their wedding day. Her hands trembled, but her heart didn't race like before. Instead, she just stared at it, feeling something unexpected. Compassion, not for him, but for herself. For the young woman who thought love meant endurance, who confused survival with loyalty, who smiled in front of cameras while crying behind closed doors. Amy whispered, "You didn't know any better. But now you do." And with that, she folded the photo and placed it in a box labeled past. She didn't throw it away. She didn't need to. Letting go didn't mean erasing. It meant remembering without reliving. That night, she texted Daniel, Hey, you busy? Just fixing the porch light. What's up? Can you come over? On my way. He showed up 15 minutes later, smelling faintly of sawdust and coffee. Amy was on the porch swing, a blanket around her shoulders. Daniel sat beside her, quiet. They didn't need small talk. They just watched the stars for a while. Finally, Amy spoke. I went through some old photos today. Daniel nodded slowly. That must have been hard. It was, Amy admitted. But it wasn't like before. I didn't feel angry or sad, I just felt ready to move on. Daniel turned to her. That's growth, Amy. That's you healing. She looked at him, her eyes soft. You know, for a long time, I didn't think I'd ever be loved again. Not without conditions, not without fear. But with you, it feels different. Daniel smiled. That's because it is. You're not being loved for what you can give. You're being loved for who you are. Amy's eyes welled up. I don't know if I deserve that. You do, he said quietly. You always did. They sat in silence for a long time, the cool night air wrapping around them like forgiveness. The next morning, Amy took her boys to the park. She packed sandwiches, juice boxes, and a little Bluetooth speaker that played soft country songs. Glenn toddled toward the swings while Gage chased a butterfly, laughing uncontrollably. Watching them, Amy realized that these small, imperfect, ordinary moments were the reward for every dark night she had survived. She didn't need a grand ending or applause. She just needed this. Sunlight, laughter, peace. A few fans recognized her and waved from a distance. Instead of shrinking away, Amy smiled and waved back. One young woman approached her hesitantly. Amy, I just wanted to say, you helped me leave a bad relationship. Watching you find yourself gave me courage. Amy's eyes softened. Thank you, honey. That means a lot, the girl smiled shyly. I hope you're really happy now. It was about remembering her own worth. That was the real transformation all along. Months later, during a reunion special, the host asked her, Amy, if you could go back and talk to the woman you were 5 years ago, the Amy who felt stuck, scared and tired, what would you tell her? Amy smiled softly. I'd tell her this. You're not weak for wanting love. You're not broken for falling apart. And you're not too late to start over. Because the version of you that comes after the pain, she's going to shine. The audience erupted in applause. Tammy, sitting beside her, grabbed her hand and whispered, Proud of you, sis. Amy squeezed it back. We did it together. The camera zoomed in. Two sisters who had turned survival into sisterhood, pain into power, and shame into strength. The final line of the special echoed like a prayer. You can't control how your story starts, but you can always rewrite how it ends. And that, right there, was Amy Slaton's truth. She didn't just survive.